Hello everyone, welcome again to my YouTube channel. It's your girl Farida. In today's video, I'm going to be answering some questions that you may have if you're planning a trip to China. Because I've been there, I feel like I'm in a good place to answer some of your questions. So let's get straight into it. Do I need a visa to visit China? This would depend on what country you're from. Currently, China is offering visa-free visit to some countries. However, I am from Nigeria and I am 100% sure that Nigerians need a visa to visit China because I had to go through a very long process. Some African countries also require a visa. I would recommend visiting the China visa application website to see if your country requires a visa to visit China. What is the best time to visit China? I traveled to China in January, which meant that the weather was not too cold or too warm. It was quite mild. It wasn't t-shirt weather, obviously, but I would say that the best time would depend on the kind of weather that you prefer on your holiday. If you want it to be really warm, I'll say go in the summer, but obviously it may also be crowded at this time because many people would want to visit at this time when the weather is amazing. But in January when I went, the weather was not too cold, wasn't too warm. We had blue skies on some days and some days it was grey skies. So I would definitely say that some of the best time to visit China are January, which was when I went because I loved it then, springtime, April to May, September to November period are also really good time to visit China. How much does it cost to travel to China? How much it costs depends on how much it would cost. It would depend on various factors. For me personally, it cost me around £2,000. This was because I needed to apply for a visa. I had to pay for my flights, which again, I booked my flight in December for a trip in January. So if you're planning a trip to China, I would definitely recommend planning well in advance, checking Skyscanner, Expedia, Kayak as well to see what deals are available and try to book well in advance because then you could find flights that are not too expensive, deals that are really good for your trip. Because my flight was about £600 thereabouts, almost 700, and paying for accommodation, paying for feeding and other tours meant that it was about £2,000. And I would definitely say that in China food is really cheap and inexpensive. What else? Transport is really cheap as well. It costs about 50p to use the subway. So definitely I would say that budget about £2,000 thereabouts for a trip to China, and I was in China for 10 days. What is the best way to get around in China? Personally for me, I would say that everything works amazing in this country. I was in Beijing, Shanghai, Xi'an, Suzhou, so I was in 4 cities and each one was amazing. And in terms of the transport, it was easy. Whether I was using public transport, using the subway, it was very, very easy and affordable. If I was using private transportation, in terms of using Uber is not available in China, by the way. So in terms of using Didi, which is the alternative to Uber, that was also really cheap as well, really affordable. I was like, why is this so inexpensive? But obviously the currency is different, the value of the currency is different. So using the subway, using Didi, using the high-speed rail, even using public bikes is so affordable and easy to get around with any form of transport that you want. Decide to walk instead of also maybe taking public transport to some places. It's also pretty easy as well to get around. So I would definitely say that if you're in China, you would not have any. I would say that for your trip to China, you would not have any trouble getting around because it's relatively easy to get around in China. But the best way to get around, there's not really a best way because everything works amazing and incredible because everything works amazing and incredibly as well. Is China safe for tourists? I mean, I went to China, I came back safe and sound in one piece. And as someone who is obviously black and Nigerian and a woman as well, a Muslim woman who wears a headscarf, I did not feel unsafe at any point in time. China felt like if I would rate some of the countries I've been to, I would rate China as one of the top 3 safest countries I've been to because I didn't even feel like, oh my days, I need to get back to my hotel really early, or I need to oh, am I outside and is someone going to attack me or whatever. I did not feel unsafe. The only thing I did not like was that people were staring at me so much. So apart from that, I felt incredibly safe, and people only stared because I would guess maybe they were curious. When I spoke to a Chinese lady as well, she also explained that a lot of Chinese people have actually never left China, so in that regard they may have never seen a black person before. So if I was a Chinese person as well, I've never seen a black person, I would probably stare because I'd be like, whoa, who is this person? Who is this white girl that looks like this that I've never seen before, that looks different to me, different to what I look like? So in that regard, people, I would say that maybe you may feel a bit uncomfortable, but definitely not unsafe. What apps do I need in China? When you visit China, you only need 2 main apps because everything else is connected because the system works. So the 2 main apps I would definitely recommend that you download on your phone and actually set up properly before you leave the UK or wherever country you're traveling from are Alipay and Weixin, and WeChat, Weixin, Alipay, maybe 3 apps. And I will say these apps because I will recommend these apps because all of the other things that you need are interlinked to this app. So if you have Alipay on your phone, you can easily access other apps. If you have Weixin or WeChat, you can easily access other apps. So make sure that you go through the processes to set them up before you leave the country, so that when you get to China, it's easily you have it readily available. And one thing I would also recommend is that once you arrive in China, make sure to actually get an actual physical SIM card. Everyone online will probably say, oh, get an eSIM, get an eSIM, get an eSIM. Everyone keeps raving on about eSIMs, but to be honest, get a physical SIM card once you arrive, because this is one mistake that I made. I did not get a physical SIM card. And I also say this because when you download some of these apps and you want to access some services, they ask you for your phone number, and eSIMs normally do not come with phone numbers. You do not get an actual phone number when you use an eSIM, and obviously when you don't have a phone number, you won't be able to access this app. So definitely make sure to get a physical SIM card either at the airport. It would be more expensive at the airport. Maybe if you cannot get it at the airport, maybe get it in a local shop once you leave the airport. But make sure to get a physical SIM card when you're in China. Other apps that you may need are maybe Baidu Maps, Baidu Translate, but again, you can easily access some of these apps easily through the 2 main apps, Alipay, Weixin. No stress. I use Google, Instagram, WhatsApp when I'm in China. Unfortunately, no, unless you use a VPN. And again, also, if in terms of using a VPN, make sure that you've downloaded your VPN and paid for it before you arrive in China. Because if you're relying on setting up a VPN whilst you're already there, it may not work. But a lot of VPNs out there that you have to pay for, but they're also free VPNs that you can easily access without having to pay a penny whatsoever. Yeah, the answer is that no, you cannot access Instagram, you cannot access WhatsApp, you cannot access TikTok without a VPN. Even TikTok, yes. What is the food like in China? I would say the food in China was amazing. I miss it so much. I even tried to replicate it once I arrived here, but it wasn't just the same. And even Chinese restaurants here, I feel like maybe they just don't serve what is served in China because it's just totally different. And so I would say the food in China is amazing. If you're a Muslim and you eat only halal foods, you easily have an abundance of that even in China. And this was a mistake that I made was that I did not find this halal restaurant early enough into my trip, because I just had this mindset that maybe I wouldn't even have access to halal foods at all. But surprisingly, there are a lot of Muslims in China and halal food is easily accessible in many places. So if you're in China, if you're planning a trip to China, you do not have to worry about food at all. You don't have anything to worry about when it comes to food, because a lot of the dietary requirements that you may need can be easily satisfied in China. How to communicate without speaking Chinese? Yes and no. Yes, because is it hard to communicate without speaking Chinese? I would definitely say yes. However, before you leave for your trip, I recommend going on YouTube, watching videos, even if it's just maybe 1 to 2 weeks before your trip, going on YouTube to watch videos, even if just learning like HSK1, for example, which is just beginner level Mandarin. Try to learn as much as possible so at least you can, start a conversation. And if you, obviously, when you then get stuck, you can continue the conversation by using Baidu Translate or other means, because then at least you've built a rapport with the person you're communicating with first. You're like, oh, I can say ni hao, I can say Zashao or Zhao or something like that. At least you start the conversation with a greeting in Mandarin, or you start something in Mandarin, and so that way when you're stuck, it shows at least this person has tried a little bit. Before my trip, I was watching a lot of videos on YouTube and following the HSK courses, and so that way when I was in China, it helped a bit because I actually had some understanding of Mandarin. But one thing I will also say is that once you leave, let's say Beijing, to go to another city like Suzhou or Xi'an or Shanghai, you notice that the accents, I said the accents, you also notice that the dialects are different. Let's say in Beijing they say Meisha. You could go to another city, they could use a different dialect to say the same thing. But if you have that like knowledge of the standard Mandarin, in a way you still understand what is being said. Just so you'd be a bit confused initially, you're like, what is this new word again? But there are a lot of dialects in China, so this is something that you should be mindful of. Even when you do learn Mandarin to a standard level, you also notice when you arrive in China that there are so many different dialects that are spoken within the country. Because again, China is one of the largest. China is the largest country. China is the country with the largest population in the whole world. What is one thing you shouldn't do in China? I think one thing that you shouldn't do is just assume that it's not a nice country. I would say before your trip, make sure that you get rid of any bias, or try as much as possible to get rid of any bias. Try as much as possible to go to China with a very open mindset, because if you go with an open mindset, you'll be like surprised in an amazing way, in a very good way. Because to be honest, it's actually a very nice country to live in. Obviously, it's not a perfect country like many countries, even in the West, and but again, like as far as like a country is, as far as like, you know, you have like access to some things, access to the basic necessities of life, access to safety and whatnot, I feel like it's a very lovely country. The people are incredibly warm and welcoming, so you do not have to worry about anything in that regard. Do not go to a country with a mindset that this is going to be an amazing do not go to a new country with the mindset that you're not going to like it. Because if you have that mindset that this is going to be a shit country, why even bother? Just stay at home in your country. So yeah, when you travel to China or to any other country, make sure to go with an open mindset, go with a clean mind, and be like, I'm just gonna, you know, take in this experience fully, without judgment, without any bias from outside forces or whatnot. This is going to be the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any further questions about China, make sure to ask in the comment section, and I may do a part 2 to this video. And again, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna apologize if I speak quite fast. If you feel like I speak quite fast, try to maybe put it on like a slower playback speed. I've not made this sort of like sit down videos in a while, so it's still kind of like me trying to get used to it. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you like this video. I hope the sound quality is pretty good as well, and I'll see you in my next video. Until then, Zaijian.